taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and analysis of games and the gaming industry. It is October 24th, 2020. We are rocketing toward the end of the year, rocketing toward the release date of Cyberpunk 2077, and hopefully a better year overall in 2021. We are here today with Obsidian and Moontag. As always, we've also got special guest Max Derrat with us. He's probably a familiar voice if you are a regular listener to our show. Cyb has guested on Max's YouTube channel several times as well. Great gaming content, as well as a lot of content about autism and mental health issues. Welcome, Max. It's great to have you back.
The party can officially start.
The party can start. Max is in the house. All right, and of course, Obsidian and Moontag, as usual, but you know, they're old news now. Just kidding. If you're listening live today, please say hello in the live chat. Send us your questions and comments there as well. We'll read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast. Don't forget to slam that like button. A lot of you have already. We really appreciate that. Wow. Lots of likes already. We barely even started. Thank you so much. If you haven't, please do slam that like button. Not only does it tell YouTube that you appreciate this content, but that like button's feeling a little lonely and it likes it rough, so make sure you give it a good slam. All right. Some interesting stuff to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the Avengers game later on, and I know both Cyb and Max are gleefully rubbing their hands, waiting to rant about that one.
Ooh, it's going to be so hard to crap talk this game without any swear words, but I will try.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we appreciate that. Yeah, we appreciate you putting in the valiant effort. We're also going to talk about the future a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the dark deeds committed by quote-unquote old Bethesda, or we should say really ZeniMax. And it's coming to light now how they they're currently being sued by another publisher for essentially poaching an entire development studio. It's mind-blowing. It is really mind-blowing. And we're going to talk about that and how this was a pattern of behavior for them, and will it get better now that the company's been bought out by Microsoft? Leadership is different. We shall see. Also, Cyberpunk 2077, is this going to be CDPR's new normal? But first off, a couple of other things. Isles of Adelar, not sure if you remember that game. We interviewed the dev about a year ago. It was October of 2019. Remember those days, back before masks and lockdowns, and we even knew the name of this virus that I'm not going to name, otherwise the YouTube bots will be all over us. But good old days. Yeah, so the Isles of Adelar, it is a fantasy, first-person, third-person fantasy action RPG. It's just within the past couple of days slid into early access, and we're looking forward to checking that one out. We did interview one of the devs about a year ago. You can check that out on our channel if you like. I was actually going to look up exactly what podcast that was if you're curious about it. Podcast number 172, streamed on October 9th, 2019. If you're curious about that, we did talk to James from the studio over there. Can't wait to load that one up later and check out what they've built. It is early access. They say right on their Steam page, don't get this game unless you are interested in like helping us squash bugs and are interested in, funding development. It's not a complete game yet, so make sure you bear that in mind.
But it is also a small game made, or not a small game. It's a small team that has made this game. When they first started working on it, it was him and his partner.
Yeah, like two of them.
Business partner, and the two of those guys went to work on the game, and it has been a really, really wonderful experience for them both. Their team has been increasing, and if you want to help a company work on a new game, and you really like kind of like Skyrim-ish type combat, and just more focused on the actual combat, then this is your This is your jam.
Plus,
this is your jam.
they have a heavy focus on co-op multiplayer and a heavy focus on modding. There's already modding tools built in the early access, plus the multiplayer component.
I'm so happy to say this is what it was one of my like first things that I said to him. I'm like, you're making a Skyrim type game. Are you prepared for mods?
They are.
And he was like, actually, we were thinking about adding that in, right from the ground up. And I said, make that your priority, because you will help the community will help you build the game. If they like it and they want to incorporate things and they want to make it better and they want to make it bigger, a community of thousands of people can create and generate more content that you and your developers can. This is a huge thing, and I wish more companies did this from the ground up to begin with. So,
I only found out about this game like right when we were just starting the podcast. You're telling me about, we're going to talk a little bit about this little indie game called Isles of Adelar. And I'm watching a video about it as we speak right now, and it's terribly interesting. It's like old school Morrowind and Oblivion, but with significant updates to the combat and the graphics, obviously. So if you guys are if you have fond memories playing those games, I highly recommend looking at some of the gameplay for this, because this is fantastic. And as we know, with the absence of a new Elder Scrolls game, at least a good one, in our lives at the moment, people are desperate for any type of game like that. That's why Kingdom Come Deliverance did so well. So maybe think about checking out this game and giving them your support, because this actually looks really, really cool.
Yeah. One of the reasons they're doing early access is to help fund development, and it is it's a very small team. But I think when you look at it, you'll be blown away that like 3 people are working on this, and it started off with 2. So, yeah. So if that piques your interest, check it out. Isles of Adelar, early access now. Just remember, it is early access. Expect it to be more broken than Baldur's Gate 3 currently. But like, people are enjoying the hell out of Baldur's Gate 3, and so I'm hoping to check out this Isles of Adelar early access later today. Okay, one other quick thing before we get into the big stories. So, Alex Hutchinson, creative director for Stadia, that should tell you a lot right there, was just had the most epic bad take on Twitter that he's getting relentlessly mocked for, to the point where Google even distanced itself from his statements. Basically said, streamers worried about getting their content pulled because they used music they didn't pay for should be more worried about the fact that they're streaming games they didn't pay for as well. First of all, pause there for a second. Most streamers buy their games, unless the game company just sends them the game. That doesn't even make sense.
From what I think his meaning was, just again judging on previous comments that he's made, is that he's suggesting that if you're not, if you're playing a free-to-play game, then you didn't pay for that either.
Yeah.
And therefore, you shouldn't be streaming it because you haven't shoveled, a licensing. You haven't had a licensing deal shoved down your throat.
Well, and that's what he goes on to say. Like, he thinks streamers should have to pay a streaming licensing fee to stream games, to stream video games. Yep, not even kidding.
Wow.
He says the real truth is that streamers should be paying the developers and publishers of the games they stream. They should be buying a license like any real business and paying for the content they use. Well, this goes to show that he just doesn't understand the gaming industry at all. If yeah, go ahead, Max.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This guy works for Google?
He works for Google. He worked on Stadia.
He's one of the heads on Google Stadia, so now we know why that thing failed miserably.
Man, it's supposed to be really hard to get into this bloody company. It's supposed to have all the brightest minds in the world, and this guy hasn't ever heard of what marketing is or of a marketing department. Do you guys not understand the way that the world is going right now?
We have,
in terms of gaming?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Exactly. We have indie studios. We have little small studios throwing their games at us constantly, and we don't have time to play them all. We don't have time to feature them all on our channel, to the point where I feel bad about it sometimes, because we cover these big games. I would love to spend more time covering the games of these small indie studios, because I'm sure a lot of them are really good, and we just don't have time for it. But why are they doing that? Because it is free marketing. The fact that we monetize the videos doesn't change the fact that they're getting free marketing, which translates into game sales. How does he not get this?
That's where your most hardcore audience is. These are the people that will go around promoting your game, the people that are absolutely gaga about the gaming industry. That's the people that you need to appeal to. And if you insult those people, you're just like Google Stadia was already digging its own grave. Right now, it's at the maybe the 8th level of hell. I'm pretty sure there might be like 1 or 2 other stupid things they can do before they reach the 9th level of betrayal. But I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing. That's like the most epically bad take I've heard in a long time.
Okay, there's a little bit of confusion about what his job title actually is. On just responding to a couple of comments in the chat here, he is on Twitter. He's listed as the creative director at a studio in Montreal, but the news we're reading, the news articles are saying Stadia creative director. So, okay, there may be a little bit of confusion, but anyway, he's definitely getting mocked a little bit from the internet community. And
Yeah, think.
The funniest part of this is, though, at the end of the night, he tweeted out, "Well, anyway, I'm going to go stream some Fall Guys now. Who wants to join me?"
I'm gonna go on a wild limb here and say that didn't go over very well.
Oh, the responses to that were classic. Yeah. Can we see your license for streaming Fall Guys, please? Yeah. Anyway, kind of a funny thing. All right. Cyb, I'll let you take the helm here. Are we going to talk about Bethesda first or Cyberpunk?
Well, let's get into Cyberpunk first here, because this is some good news, and the Bethesda stuff is going to be. It's also, like, honestly, when we look at it, I gotta say it's sort of good news. It really is, because there's been a scarlet letter, from my opinion. There's been a scarlet letter on Bethesda for a while now, and the only reason why I haven't hassled them more on it, and I've mentioned this several times, is that the universe gave them comeuppance on their own, and I don't necessarily feel a need to haze somebody or bark up a tree when it's clear that chickens coming home to roost and yielding their own problem is their own problem, sort of thing. So yeah, that's for the most part kind of why I haven't mentioned it too much, but I figured this is a good time to really go into the weeds, where I remember hearing there was a particular person talking about this, and they're kind of an industry person, and they went, "Oh my God, can you believe that this happened? Can you believe that Bethesda did this? Wow, this is like, why did they do this?" It's like, because this is what that company has always done. And I'm quite serious on it. Yeah, so we'll get into that for a second. Let's talk about happier news first in Cyberpunk. So Cyberpunk, I was chatting with somebody recently, and about 6 days ago or so, and there was this conversation on, like, hey, we've kind of seen a little bit more of the game, and OMG, things are truly amazing, truly spectacularly amazing with this title. We did not expect them to be capable of doing this, and like, and what I mean by this is like The Witcher. You know how good The Witcher was. You know how great The Witcher was. Yeah, that was just a warm up act. That was just a warm up act for what they're going to be doing in the next few games. Starting with 77 or 76. Sorry. 77. Oh my God.
Don't say 76. Don't associate that cursed number with them.
Naming their games so freaking close to the same thing. So 77 Cyberpunk is going to be an absolutely amazing title that is going to go far deeper and far better and far bigger and far more amazing than you have ever seen. And they were talking about just kind of having, this was the same content that everybody got to play a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that they were looking at a lot of the advertisement, and for the vast majority of the advertisement, a good chunk of the content that has been shown, with the exception of like one or two things here and there, has all been like I think I said this before, pre big moment in the game. So there's a big moment. It's kind of like in Fallout 4 where like, you know, there's the Brotherhood come flying in, and then post that event, everything kind of changes in the world. And you have this in a couple other games too, right? Like in Skyrim, it's like until you kill a first dragon, there's no dragons around until you go on that first quest to go talk to the Jarl and then trigger the event to actually go fight the first dragon that you face. The only first dragon that you see is the one in the opening cinematic, and if you bypass that, then you don't have that, you don't see that at all. And so you can play hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of the game without incorporating that main mechanic into your gameplay. And there's a mechanic and there's a thing that happens that's somewhat sort of similar in a very loose way, which is why I don't think it's spoilery. There's a big event thing that happens. It's been alluded to in the trailers and some of the videos and footage that we've seen. But there's this big moment where we are seeing this, we're going to see the world shift. And almost all of the content that we've seen in the game so far has been before that time period.
Yeah.
And
all
as far as
prologue stuff, basically, is what we've seen.
Yeah, it's basically prologue stuff. And very few people have played post-prologue. And nobody, as far as we know, aside from CDPR themselves and them showcasing some of that footage, nobody has gotten to report on what that post-prologue world is like. So we've got a couple quests that are pre-prologue. Again, just kind of putting it together from what we can tell. There's a car heist that you go on. That's where you may, that's where you get introduced to the basic mechanics, and then there's you save the girl from the Maelstrom. Sorry, not from the Maelstrom. You save the
scavengers,
the robot from the Maelstrom.
The Maelstrom from the Maelstrom. Yeah, the robot from the
Maelstrom. Girl from the scavengers, and then there's one or two other little things that you do before then. You get that's where you get your operation. You get your new eye. You get your hand upgrade. You get a couple other things. All of that stuff is happening essentially in the prologue. And this is the majority of the stuff that we've seen coming out of the studio in the form of reviews and stuff like that from journalists who and content creators and celebrities and all that. That's the content that we've seen. Very few people have played past that, and nobody's allowed to freely talk about that aside from what CDPR has officially shown. And from that, we can tell that that's probably the journey to the wall, fighting Sasquatch, and one or two other events there. So most of the game is still behind that curtain. Excuse me. And that curtain is what that's what really changes the game and changes the environment. And so I was talking with somebody who was saying that they kind of have gotten a chance to talk with a lot of the developers and see, it's kind of an interview that's kind of ongoing. It's going to come out later on down the road. And without giving any details, they said that simply this game is like looking back at The Witcher. That game was just it was like an entree or an appetizer, or just like, hey, this is what we want to do, and here's our like tech pitch. So what we have is this company is creating games on a level that is truly beyond anything. Like, you've got what was that one? Is Sony? I think it was Sony now talking about, oh yeah, we're gonna make
quadruple A game.
Triple A game. I'm confusing my numbers and words and stuff.
I think
so. Quadruple A game, and they're like, that's all talk until they can actually prove that they can actually do it. This CDPR, making Cyberpunk, this is the first what feels like a truly like quadruple A game. And this is coming from somebody who's been in who's a very trusted source when it comes to video gaming and stuff. And again, no, he did not break any NDAs. He's just talking about the feeling that he's getting looking at the thing, seeing other people and how they're reacting to it, talking to the developers, and no secrets here. Just like an inner feeling, that gut feeling that a professional has when they're talking about like what's going on in the industry. And yeah,
there are several studios or several publishers who claim they are working on quadruple A games, including Ubisoft.
yeah, I think it was Ubisoft. That's who I was thinking.
I'm not sure if Sony did. I think Microsoft has hinted at it as well, and there's an article here that says PUBG Corp's new game will be quadruple A. I don't know if that means anything, but anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, what does that even mean? I mean, it's like it's an arbitrary attribution, really.
I have a quadruple A YouTube channel. You guys should go check it out. I have quadruple A YouTube videos. You guys are only triple A. No, I'm kidding. You guys are great. But
we got to rename ourselves. We got to rebrand Quadruple S League.
Right.
This league. Yeah. So everything that you just said there about that what's the official position of the guy that you're reporting from?
I can't say. It's a guy who does. It's a guy who talks and does like content on video games. So it's like and again, not breaking NDA. They mentioned nothing about playing the game itself. Just mentioning having talked to the people that play it, at the studio, who apparently doing some interviews and some other stuff. Just talking to like people at the public events and whatnot. It's like this is feeling like, and I believe this was parroted by a couple other people doing some content this week. I think I saw another person kind of mention the same thing, and I'm betting they get that from the same person, because the amount of people who are like, this is beyond The Witcher 3. This isn't the Witcher 3 in sci-fi. This is better than The Witcher 3 was and could be considered even at its best, even at the absolute best. This game is outshining that game significantly.
I don't understand how, because The Witcher 3, that came out in 2015, right? Mm-hmm. That game still holds up in almost every respect 5 years later in terms of gameplay, graphics, just the sheer amount of love and attention that went into every aspect of that game. And for you to say that Cyberpunk is going to go beyond that, I mean, it's every honest professional game developer's goal to try and surpass what they did before. But to do that with Cyberpunk 2077, to do it better, it's almost incomprehensible to me. If what you're saying is true, we could literally have one of the greatest games of all time. And personally, the only thing that would probably make this game the greatest game of all time and the greatest game that I ever played is if you had flying cars. But that's my one thing that I'm always on about. I really want a flying car so I can fly around Night City. Mm-hmm. But I know it's not going to happen. But it's okay. It's okay. I'll get over it. Just like I got over the fact that you can't fly dragons in Skyrim.
We can dream together, Max.
Yes, and there will be mods anyway. So
well, I wonder how difficult that would be to mod a car to just fly around. I mean, yeah.
I mean, they did it in GTA San Andreas. Why can't they do it here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, it comes down to a question of how well it'll perform, I think. Because I mean, even Fallout 4, you can if you use console commands, you can just you can detach yourself from gravity and just fly around.
It's not the same, Ash. Come on.
I know that, but I'm just saying. You could technically do it. I'm sure you can do it. Anyway.
But, yeah, if the game is anything like... I mean, we saw that demo that they released 2 years ago. Today, I still watch that demo, and I'm still terribly impressed. If they can get the art design, the density of crowds, the gunplay to match that of what we saw 2 years ago, and I'm sure in the last 2 years they've improved upon it, I think this might be one of the best games that I played in the last decade. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Blissful Soul, there are flying cars, but they are preset, like they follow a preset path.
Yes, so, just like the dragons in Skyrim.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about, Doc.
But Max is talking about actually getting into a car and flying it wherever you want. That's a bit more of a technical challenge, and it's probably not going to be in the game, at least not at launch. All right, and Moon wants the same thing. Any other thoughts, Moontag?
Yeah, no, like honestly, the idea of having like air traffic roads for flying cars would be really, really neat. Like, can you imagine, like, you're driving along and then suddenly somebody like lands on your vehicles trying to hijack it? Like, that would be fun.
That would be crazy. Oh, could you imagine those gunplay, like, the scenes from the game where you're, the guys are attacking you in the car and you're shooting back. Could you imagine that while flying around? That'd be insane, man. Insane.
Right?
I guess we'll just have to rely on Just Cause to scratch that itch that we collectively have.
I suppose.
Right.
All right. So, Saib, did you have any more to say about that?
Well, flying cars is one of these things where it's just a technical limitation, but it's also a lore limitation as well. If like when we get, I mean, we sort of have flying cars, in the universe as is. Like in our universe, they're called helicopters and they fly around cities. But even they're not allowed to just fly willy nilly. Like they have to report to their traffic control. Hey, we're flying from here to there. You know, we're covering. Looks like there's an accident on the freeway on the west side, so we're going to fly out there. We're going to take some photos, and then we're going to fly from there to the south side. Take a look on the south side. Then we're going to move from the south side to the east side, and then that's it. And that's the basis of the, that's how that works. And when we get flying cars, like literal flying cars that are going to go from one tower to another, those things are not going to, it's going to be exactly, and this is where the game is actually going to showcase reality first. When they invent flying cars, you will not be able to fly them wherever you want to in the city.
Yeah.
They will be on a preset path where you are flying from tower A to tower B, and it's going to take exactly 53 seconds, give or take a second or two, and that's your trip. And you're not going to be able to go, hey, let's check out that over there. You're not going to be able to do that because, and the reason why in space shows and Star Trek, Star Wars, that kind of thing, you see the all the vehicles flying in a line, and you're like, why would they fly in a line? Why don't they just fly wherever they want to? Because that would create like accidents everywhere that would result in debris coming down from the sky, landing on floating. It's pure chaos, and so.
Hey man, Cyberpunk 2077 is already set in a pretty dystopian world. I think if you added.
And maybe you could say something for like maybe the one of the things that you get like very end game that you work up to is like an unlimited flying license, and there's only like a handful of people who have that. And we clearly see like some vehicles, some flying vehicles in the game that are not flying as to what they're supposed to, but they're already like outlawed anyway. So or they're military, right? And so there is some significant difficulties that we have with this kind of stuff. And just kind of as a heads up, like this is probably something that in all honesty, it's like flying in World of Warcraft. Flying in World of Warcraft was a great idea that ruined the game. And it was a great idea that just made all of the content below you null and void. It reduced your interactions with people. It stopped, it stopped the vast majority of ganks and dealing with world PvP and a bunch of other stuff. It just made that stuff non-existent. It also made like general interaction. I remember walking around, going around and meeting people, talking with people, pre-flying. Post-flying, it was like, all right, I'm going to point myself in that direction, hit auto move, and then I'm going to go grab a drink. It's it really ruined the world. And I think the same thing would happen here. So it's one of those things that's for Cyberpunk. I'm not actively interested in that because the minute you do flying in Skyrim, like with mods, it renders the entire world obsolete basically, and you're just like, all right, well, why am I playing at this point?
You know what? When I brought up my desire for flying dragons or flying cars in past games, I've heard that exact same argument, and I gotta admit, I have no good argument against that. You're absolutely right. It does take away from all the stuff that's below that you need to interact with in order to make the RPG game a true RPG game. You got to interact with these people.
But doesn't that come down to player choice at that point? Like, you could
Well,
choose to
yes
just
and no.
fly from point A to point B, just like you can choose to fast travel, or you can traverse and see what's there and interact with stuff.
At the same
other
time,
thing-
I like flying because like I can look at the environment around me, right? Because like, sometimes I'm so concentrated on trying to like get from point A to point B, I don't really enjoy the scenery as much as I could, unless I like just stop. But if I'm stopped, I'm not moving, right?
Mhm.
Fair enough. I do know that when I played The Witcher 3, I almost never rode Roach when I was going long distances because I found I could just go much faster on foot.
Oh, really?
Like Roach is faster in terms of his immediate speed, but he's hard. I found him harder to maneuver like through forests and stuff. So I would just hop off and run.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I found. I wonder if it'll be the same situation in Cyberpunk. If cars will slow you down. Well, no, probably not cars because they're significantly faster. But I wonder if that would be the same case if you had like a flying car. And you have to
So I think the solution to this, from what I've been seeing, I think the solution to this is what Genshin Impact has done with gliding. It's like gliding, and gliding makes sense because you kind of usually, so you have a takeoff point and then you have a landing point, and that's like basically hard worked into the game, and you're not going to be able to like work around that at all. And
Mhm.
I actually think that's pretty darn cool, and it seems to work out, pretty well, all
Mhm.
things considered. So
All right, but let's get back to the future. So, given everything we've discussed thus far about CD Projekt, what do we see for the future? What do you see, Cyb, Max, Moon? What are we expecting for CD Projekt Red's next game, whether it's a Cyberpunk game or something else? We know Cyberpunk multiplayer is coming, but let's look, 5 years down the road. So 2025, maybe they have a new game coming out. What are we expecting to see from that?
Witcher 4 or I don't know, Witcher Cyberpunk crossover. That'd be pretty cool. Just
Dimension
having
hopping, yeah.
medieval people cross into the cyberpunk realm and everybody fighting each other with swords. It'd be a young boy's dream. Come on.
You feel free to mod that game there, Max. But I doubt that'll be an official. Who knows? They're crazy enough; they might do it. But in terms of scope, like beyond just look like what IP they're gonna do, in terms of scope and how mind blown we are about Cyberpunk 2077, like are we gonna be just as mind blown by their next game? Do you think, or is this gonna be kind of standard? Or
the multiplayer is going to be the biggest question of the day, right? The biggest question of the day is going to boil down to the multiplayer and how that's going to factor into into how they're able to move forward with that. Because we've seen them make amazing single player games. We have no idea what their scalability is when it comes down to multiplayer. So this is interesting, and I am not entirely certain of what that prognosis for that is. So, yeah.
okay,
I'm just hoping that they don't get too ambitious for their own good because they currently have a lot of goodwill with the gaming community. Everybody loves them and everybody's expecting this game to be amazing. And I hope that it's not so amazing that they set a standard that they can't really surpass. You know what I mean? Like maybe the multiplayer will be a good addition. I'm sure it will. But as for the next game, I just hope that they don't overburden themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that Cyberpunk 2077 is still, it's created for current gen hardware, which is 7 years old at this point. It's created for the same generation of hardware as The Witcher 3.
And
there's going to be an enhanced version coming out for the PS5 and Xbox Series X. But their next game, whatever it may be, is going to be created for that generation of hardware. Like that, where that's going to be the standard, as opposed to the PS4, Xbox One era.
Even if the gameplay of their next game is somewhat disappointing, we can certainly be certain that the game will look the most beautiful that we've ever seen any video game, without a doubt.
I don't disagree with that statement. And by the way, Max, have you checked out the stuff about their implementation of the Jali software, JALI, the facial?
I do not. Nope.
It's the facial animation and lip syncing software that they're using for their characters, and this is why the character animations just seem so lifelike. This is one of the reasons why. We talked about this previous podcast, and it's not widely publicized stuff yet, but it's this AI-driven software that they basically it not only lip syncs with a high degree of accuracy, but it's designed to really focus on expressiveness and expressing emotion and like nonverbal communication cues and like subconscious head movements and eye movements and things like that. It's pretty crazy. And I think this is why people were so taken with the Judy Alvarez scene that came up that we saw in Night City Wire #1. Mm-hmm. The reason that she looks so lifelike and people were so taken with her, I'm pretty sure has to do with this Jali implementation that they're using. Mm-hmm. So they're not mocapping all of the faces; they're using this AI-driven software for it.
This is where I think we're gonna really start to see like people really, really, really fall in love with characters, because one of the things with what's the term for AI and artificially created characters that they're real but they're not, they look real but there's still that like
Uncanny Valley?
So the Uncanny Valley, thank you. Uncanny Valley is going to be greatly diminished by tech like this. And this is one of these tech things that I've been talking about for ages. We are about to see the Uncanny Valley be
surpassed.
And
there's a bridge over that sucker. Yep.
What it took was the adding this like emotional language to the facial features between interactions and between like things and during it too. So before, when you had an AI or character talking, it's like they would have that they have one of two things that happens. They either have a set like sway or like the idle animation and that idle animation is a loop, or it has very limited like mixes that you can do, and a human can detect looping idle animations with less than 1,000 like iterations. A human will recognize that very quickly as not something that is real. And so when you have an AI able to like program it in and take it deeper and express it more and change it more, we're going to start to see stuff like this like surpass that valley, because what we're having now is we're having millions of iterations instead of just a few hundred iterations. Maybe for now it's like 1,000, like 1,000 or two.
Well, it might be infinite, depending on as Kamakadillion in the chat asks, is Jali pre-generated or real time? And I'm actually not sure for Cyberpunk what they're doing, but I'm guessing that you could do either.
I from what I understand, it's real time, so it's adjusting things in the real time. There's gonna be conversations and pre-scripted stuff where that stuff is kind of pre-baked in, because you're essentially playing a recording of some of these encounters. But then other encounters that aren't pre-scripted in, so just like generalized conversations, that there may be more of an artificial like live feed in that process. I'm not 100% certain on this. This is just from what I've been kind of understanding from tech, because I am still like, I'm still on the outside looking in on this stuff. I'm not, I'm not privy to the code, and if I was, I couldn't say. So it's not this isn't coming from a place of like, oh yeah, take this to the bank.
Yeah.
This is exactly how it's working. This is how I think that it's working based off of my own expertise.
Right, and if you go to Jali's website and you look at what the goal of the software is, because it goes beyond just video games, but they want to create lifelike like avatars and like personal. It seems like the goal is to create real time stuff, and so I don't know how it's being implemented in Cyberpunk 2077 exactly. It could all be kind of pre-generated and pre-baked, or it might be real time. That'll be an interesting experiment, I think, to go in and like record the same conversations multiple times and then compare them side by side and see if there's those subtle differences, or if you can detect any loops or anything like that. I think that'll be interesting for some of the more technically minded stuff.
Now that you told me about all this, I'm fascinated, but I'm also kind of scared, because now I don't think I'm ever going to be actually able to play the game, because all I'm going to be doing is at the very beginning, when you're creating your character, I'm just going to be giving all these characters like big Botox lips and thick bones, and just watching the opening cutscenes and seeing if I can break that software and make some really, really freaky looking people.
Hey, you do you, man. And sorry for ruining the game for you.
No, you're not ruining the game for me. You're making it the greatest game of all time. Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, glad to be of help. Jagos says Judy and Jali, match made in heaven. I agree.
Can I just note that there are over 200 people watching this show live right now, guys. There's only 65 people watching. Ash, Side, can I take a cue from Philip DeFranco to try and get people to hit that like button?
Old Philip DeFranco, recent Philip DeFranco, or new Philip DeFranco?
New.
Okay, well, I don't like the new stuff. I like the recent stuff that's not old stuff. Old stuff, I mean, he was just a horn dog. Moderately old stuff was like
yeah. That's not important, right? Go ahead, Max. Do your thing. I trust you.
Go ahead.
All right, guys, make sure you hit that like button, or I will personally punch you in the throat.
Okay,
the statements of Max Derrat do not represent the opinions of the Triple S League.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Max.
We do not necessarily condone the physical assaulting of our fans. It's not something that we typically do.
I'm just joking, guys. Come on.
Do
it for Ash and Side, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Okay.
Those are Adam in the chat. Those are fighting words.
Too Tall 12 says, Max, don't threaten me with a good time and not deliver.
Okay.
Chat's getting
spicy.
Chat's getting spicy.
But no, seriously, guys, we really, really, really do appreciate it. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do. Yeah. I see those likes climbing. Thank you all so much. And if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. If you're listening after the fact, leave comments down below. And let us know what you think. We do this podcast live so that we can have this community interaction with the chat and stuff. It means that the audio quality is sometimes not as good, but we believe there's a lot of value to this live interaction. So this is why we do this way. And so we're glad you're here. We really are. And if you're not on our Discord server, hit the link in the description below to join the Discord server. Lots of great people there. Lots of gaming happening there. People getting together to game together. Lots of great discussions about all kinds of topics. And we keep it very non-political. We keep it very, very positive and friendly. So great mods on our side there, on our team. It's a good place. It's a good place. Okay.
very quickly for the record, I don't mean to get these guys in trouble. I just remember when Philip DeFranco said that, he actually got a ton more likes after he said that. So I'm just trying to help these guys out.
Humor is, yeah. I mean, we know you're joking, man. We know you're joking, of course. I know there's always because like somebody from YouTube might listen to that and say, "Oh, you're threatening violence." Blah blah blah. It's kind of stupid that you can't tell jokes anymore.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But anyway, all right. Anything more on Cyberpunk before we move on to the dark sins of Bethesda?
less than 1 month. Just reminding you guys until we get to play this amazing game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it kind of doesn't feel real. You know,
Right.
like we've been covering this for so long, and it's always been this far away thing, and then it got pushed back a couple of times. It's like, wait, it's actually going to release? What are we going to do when it releases? Well, obviously we'll play the game and cover the game, but it's going to be like a massive change for our content. What were you trying to say, Saib?
I can't remember now.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, no.
All right. Well, let's talk about Bethesda, everybody's favorite topic. So, there's a really interesting story going on right now. Bethesda's getting sued by, just bring up my notes here, Ragnarok, game publisher Ragnarok. Because essentially, back when Rune 2 came out, developed by Human Head Studios, there was a lot of things going on behind the scene, and basically the day that Rune 2 launched, the development studio, Human Head, closed, and all of their staff went over to a new studio at Bethesda. And of course, so Ragnarok was left holding the bag. Now they're suing Bethesda, but also prior to this, like there had been talks. Obviously, Bethesda was in talks with this studio before the game launched, because it was like the day the game launched, everybody left Human Head Studios and went over to Bethesda. But Bethesda had also purchased all their equipment, which had all the source code and all of this stuff on it. It's a crazy situation, and this was reported on back in July of this year. But now they're getting sued by Ragnarok, and Ragnarok had sued the former Human Head Studios. Ragnarok was suing Human Head Studios, but it's now expanded its lawsuit to include Bethesda and ZeniMax because of some of the allegations of misconduct, or what they say is like harmful misconduct. So, in part, the lawsuit reads, 2 weeks prior to the launch of Rune 2, ZeniMax secretly formed a new subsidiary, Roundhouse Studios LLC, and used that company to purchase all of Human Head's equipment and take over its leases. That equipment contained plaintiffs, that would be Ragnarok, plaintiffs' trade secrets, the source codes and materials for Rune 2 and Oblivion Song. That's the other game they were working on. In that same time frame, in order to complete a de facto merger, ZeniMax arranged to have all employees dismissed from Human Head and hired by ZeniMax. Crazy. Insane stuff. All right.
So they are, and they didn't turn over the source code to the people who had funded the project, and so therefore,
well, they have now. They did eventually do
because
that.
they were backed into a legal corner, and they had to. But this isn't abnormal for old, and I want to make this clear, because certain companies like to create blacklists and stuff, and I don't agree with that, but I also don't necessarily like I think that blacklists are one of these things where it's like, I understand from both perspectives. You want to have accountability for the people reporting on the game, which I don't think there's enough of, but you also need, accountability for people who are making games and making promises and breaking promises and doing things that are, highly suspect, among many, many other problems. So kind of want to get that out first. But this is, and also to make this very clear, this is what old Bethesda used to do. Old Bethesda was run by basically a bunch of litigation lawyers who got lucky and invested in video gaming at the right time and ended up becoming the financial backbone, or the financial, not backbone, the financial organizers of the company.
Well, we're talking about ZeniMax here, right? We're not talking about
Yes,
Bethesda
we're
Games.
talking Zen,
It's not
yes,
Bethesda Game Studios. It's not
yes.
Bethesda the publisher.
ZeniMax
It's
is the primary culprit here. Now, ZeniMax has done a bunch of really, really shady things in the past, including buying the Fallout franchise. And when they bought out the Fallout franchise, they didn't buy it out as a whole. They bought a lease on creating 3 games. The original concept behind some of the people at the Bethesda studio was that they really liked the Fallout universe and they wanted to make a game really bad because they had this vision for Fallout 3 and they really loved it. And there were some people who had this great idea, this great vision. Fallout 3 was a pretty dang good game. You know, I still like it, it's still one of the top rated games of all time, frankly. And I think it was, you know, really, really solid what they did. So they were like, all right, we want to do this Fallout thing. So the ZeniMax people were like, well, we can't buy it outright; it's too expensive, and we don't want to put down that. Like they could have probably have bought it out if they really wanted to, but what they decided to do instead was they were going to lease it for 3 games, and they would see how successful it was. And so they leased it for 3 games, and in the lease agreement, they looked at Interplay, who were the original company that made the original game. Now, most of the original developers that made Fallout 2, Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, most of those people, the biggest conglomeration of those people that are together today, and a lot of them have been separated, so that the pool has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. But the biggest pool of those workers are currently at Obsidian Entertainment. Okay, so I'm trying to keep the data points really factored in here. So there was a group of people who still managed to hold on to the original IP, the original concept. They brought in some of the people that had been working on it originally, and they proceeded to make a Fallout MMO because they said, all right, you guys make single player games. We're going to make a Fallout MMO. And let's put this in agreement that we can make the Fallout MMO. You guys are going to make the Fallout universe, and we'll make sure that the stories don't cross over each other. That was the deal. And they got to work on it. And just as they announced, just as Fallout 3 came out, game hit massive success, revitalized the whole Fallout concept, IP, retrofuturism, new genre that basically appeared overnight as a mainstay in gaming. And this just exploded in ways that nobody could have factored in. And this is when Interplay made the announcement, hey guys, if you like Fallout 3, you're going to love our new Fallout MMO. We have a Fallout MMO. It's called Fallout Online. It's coming soon. We've been working on it for 3 years now. It's going to be great. It's got this whole new concept and a new take on factions and survival mechanics and settlement systems and I said that word, and you might go, settlement system? You mean Fallout 4 settlement system? Yeah, really close. You want to know where that idea came from? It came from this. It came from the MMO. They were going to have this system where you helped create settlements and you helped those settlements survive. And if you didn't do that, if you were on a server that didn't actively help these settlements live, they would essentially die off, and then you would be left with nothing until you and your character died off, and then you had to basically restart somewhere else. So if the raiders got just free reign of everything would deteriorate and fall apart, and then you would be left with a giant wasteland that was unlivable to the point where the entire server died. And then the server would be restarted. And then you would be told, essentially, and that this is why you want to cooperate with some people. So that would give the incentive for factions and stuff to exist on the server to make sure that there was some level of people maintaining general public good essentially. You could still be raiders, but if you were raiders, you also had to, have some kind of farming or some kind of resource gathering system. If you were solely subsisting off of raiding other people, if you raided them to death and then there was nothing left, you're just a guy in a desert with a gun and no water. So congratulations, you just killed yourself because you killed the last person who was building a well. It's like that kind of a system. So again, the game never came out. A lot of this stuff is not public knowledge. A lot of this stuff is was systems in design. They were not systems that were released and tested thoroughly. So how this stuff would have worked, maybe I'm stretching it out a little bit here, because again, a lot of this stuff unprovable at this point, which I hate to say because of the following thing that happened. Bethesda and ZeniMax said, "Wow, this Fallout game is really, really awesome. Is there any way we can own this IP now?" And all these litigation lawyers went to the contract, looked it over, and they said, "Why, yes, we may have already pre-baked the ability to acquire the IP through proper legal means." And everybody was standing around going, "What was that?" "Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. We said that they could make a Fallout MMO, period. We did not indicate that the Fallout MMO would actually contain the world and be built inside the world of Fallout as we see it. So we are going to sue Interplay, the original holders of the license, for how dare you create a Fallout MMO based in the Fallout universe and the Fallout IP. We told you you could make a Fallout MMO. We did not tell you you could make a Fallout MMO inside the IP of that world. This is how dirty they went. And if your skin is crawling right now because you're like, that's so dirty. Well, the good news is they lost the first suit that they brought. Now, it took them a couple months, but the judge basically laughed at them and said, "You guys are idiots." But then they appealed, and they took it to the higher court, and then they lost that too. And then they sued again, and they took it to they escalated again, took it to the next higher court. And in this time, 2 years had passed. They sent legal threat after legal threat after legal threat after legal threat at both the company Interplay that Interplay was using to help develop the game, and then started to target individuals within those companies with cease and desist, and then threats of lawsuits and stuff. Every dirty trick that you could possibly imagine that was being used was being used. Now, they were burning money. ZeniMax was burning money like crazy on this, because it cost a lot of money for them to keep taking these steps that were, every time they got to the court, the judge looked at them and said, "You guys are crazy. This is never going to stand. You're going to lose this case." And every time they did it, they found some way of tweaking around, because these, again, as I stated, these people were litigation lawyers. They specialized in making your life a living hell. And this is why I said when it came to 76 that certain people looked and saw what was being done, and they had two choices: either walk away from the project entirely and say, "Oh, my health," or, "Oh, I'm spending more family time." Because if you dared come out and say this, every ounce of weight, and again, these are people who don't do anything for a living other than come up with this BS. They would sit there and ruin these people's lives if they came out and said, "Yeah, 76 was a mess, and the people that are at fault on this is this person, this person, this person," and they're ruining the company. And so this is the threat that you were under while working here. This is the disgusting vice script that these people had on this. And so this is, again, old ZeniMax that was controlled by the people that have now sold it off and are now out of the company, essentially. This is, from everything I've heard, they're not involved in this anymore. They were given a huge package, lots of money, and told to screw off. And I'm so thankful for this.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop you there because I can detect through the force that Max is busting to say something.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Obviously, everything that you're saying right now is just typical corporate legal maneuvering, and it's disgusting. And unfortunately, stuff like this happens all the time, and we don't know about it. And thanks to shows like this, we can actually be privy to it. Oddly enough, though, the one thing that I actually wanted to ask about was this notion of the Fallout MMO and sort of these novel game mechanics that they were thinking of implementing. Around what time were they thinking of making these games where you had to cooperate in the Fallout universe in order to make sure not everything goes to hell? Do you remember around what time that was happening?
It was about a year or two after Fallout 3 came out.
Okay, so 2009. I guess around that time they weren't privy to the fact that gamers tend to be what's a G-rated way of saying this? They're not very nice people when it comes to playing online together. They tend to just kill each other for the sake of it.
No,
And
I would say, now your perspective, like what servers did you play on? PvP servers or PvE servers in WoW?
I played on both, and in respect to both, I found that they tend to be quite cruel, and they tend to be crueler depending on what type of game you're playing. Now, WoW is sort of a unique game in that respect, whereas with games that are focused more so around gunplay, I found that people tend to just kill each other and look after their own best interest.
I'm looking at like the organizational power of WoW and the guilds that happened there that did things like the Ankaraji Gate. Guilds in EVE Online is another great example of people who spend years working essentially a second job, and not a hey, I spent 40 hours a week grinding. No, these are people who are doing incredibly complex financial transactions, deals, mergers, acquisitions, working with other guilds, that kind of stuff. And so this is basically how I perceived the concept of Fallout Online game, was that they would say, all right, you know, in Fallout 4, if you do a really good job with your settlements, that you get them really big, you can find NPCs that bring in like special stores and merchants and stuff like that. Basically, it was this system on crack, where you would have the ability to create and design and build massive armories and weapon creation centers that wouldn't exist if you didn't have the network and the structure in built into the world to allow that to exist. So you can have plasma weapons, but you're going to have to like have the industry to manage and create those plasma weapons, or you're not going to have plasma weapons, period. You need the technicians to you need to have an area that is able to push out the natural predators, like a giant army of death claws, then set up a town that can then set up a base of operations with which to basically like have archaeologists that then dig the site out, this old military site out, cleanse all the radiation. Then you need the scientists to backwards engineer a bunch of the stuff. Then you need the resources to actually create the new weapons, and then to get those to all your people. That system would create an army of soldiers in super powered armor walking around with plasma weapons, versus if that server didn't have that organizational effort, then the best thing you would be running around with is a bunch of leather, a death claw gauntlet, and maybe some shotgun shells. So that's the difference, that a well organized server with a deep constructing tie of the community coming together to work and build stuff, you'd still have those great moments where that town was then raided by a rival guild who had built up all this like effort and time and resources, and they had sent plants into the other guild for like a year and a half to like go deep cover so that they could lower the defenses, and the raiders could come in and take over everything, and then they would be sitting on the pile of weapons and stuff. But then their surrounding economy would gradually like fall apart until everything fell apart, and then maybe some other enterprising group would come in, kick all those people out, and then rebuild and it was the process of building that kind of a mechanic where the community would build things up, and then other community members would try to tear it down, and then that community or another community would come back and get revenge. Like, think of all this stuff. Like, are you familiar? If anybody's familiar with the EVE Online, like,
Right.
sagas of, like, there's a guild that sent a spy into another guild, that they were hired to go in and ruin the guild because somebody paid them real world money to take out this guild because they didn't like this guild. So they sent in a guy who spent a year getting into, like, cozying right up next to the lead guild manager, and then they ambushed them and then destroyed the entire guild, raided their things, and they stole an equivalent of like $150,000 in-game assets that was the real world, like, price tag. It's like creating a system where that stuff would happen regularly.
So this is what Interplay was trying to do.
This was what Interplay was trying to do. You could probably find some of the old stuff where they talked about how settlements needed interaction. And I got into the beta very briefly right before Bethesda came in and shut them down.
So
I was very active.
How did that happen? So let's finish the story out there. So ZeniMax kept appealing and peeling the lawsuits, so this one dragged on for a couple of years.
Yeah, until Interplay had no money left. They had won every case, but they had no money left. They were stressed out. They basically said, "All right, fine, we give up." And the settlement gave them the IP license, but Bethesda had to shell out several $1 million to take care of all of Interplay's debts, and then to pay them like a $2 million gross top off. That's how much that they were in the wrong, is that even when they won, they had to pay everything to the other company. And then Interplay they did end up falling apart because the leadership at that point was kind of taxed out, and they tried to, like, get Dark Isles up running again, and last I heard, things just kind of, like, stalled out and they died off, and there was a lot of anger because of like we could have won this if they had taken it to the Supreme Court. If they had managed to take it to the Supreme Court, if they had managed to find some extra backers and some better lawyers, if they had taken it to the Supreme Court, this would have been a ground-setting case, and I suspect strongly that Bethesda and ZeniMax would have been dismantled. This is probably what would have happened if they had taken it to the Supreme Court, is they would have said, you guys were aggressively attacking and using litigation to push your stuff. Now you're going to lose. Now you're going to be sued for everything that you own, and you're going to lose everything. And this is what has to happen to certain people who do this. They have to lose everything, so it encourages everybody else not to use litigation as a weapon. Because we've seen what happens when people use litigation as a weapon. We know exactly what happens. We've been threatened with it before. We had a dear content creator friend be removed, not just from YouTube, the entire internet. He doesn't log in on anything. He has no noticeable space on the internet anymore, period, because of what one gaming company decided to do through litigation and threats of litigation. And they sat him down and they said, if you dare to defy us, we will make your life a living hell. Even if it costs us 10, 20, 30 million dollars, we will make your life a living hell, and you will never, ever, ever sleep easy again, period. And unfortunately, that's a thing that can happen.
They're like the corporate version of Scientologists.
Yeah.
You're going to talk crap about something that we do. We're going to sue the pants off of you.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this is what old Bethesda, and I can't reiterate this enough. This is what old Bethesda was doing. Old Bethesda, Bethesda now no longer does this. Like, because as far as we understand, the people who were behind this, they got bought out, and Microsoft's now in charge, and Microsoft basically says, all right, you guys are unneeded now. And I mean, at this point, they really are, like, from what we can see. But we will still see where this goes, because we still have there's some concern about where this will continue to go, whether or not we're going to see this kind of behavior come back. And one thing that we hope, is that Microsoft doesn't pick this stuff up and start utilizing these same tactics. There is, of course, always a threat, right? There's always a danger of having these issues resurface and having these problems, come to life once again. But yeah.
Can I just say two positive things in regards to everything that Saib said there? First of all, just I want to apologize for my aforementioned pessimism in regards to the way that people play online. A lot of people in the chat, like Scadrill and who's the other one? Katriox, talking about PvE and PvP and how people actually do work together, and that's terribly encouraging, and it makes me want to play games like this more so because of what Saib just said and what the chat just said. So thank you for that. But more so to the overall point about the legalese about this, nowadays we, rightfully lament the fact that because the internet has given so much more power to the gamer and the consumer, that there can be a certain level of unneeded toxicity in regards to the smallest transgression, whether it's by a content creator or a game developer or whatever. But let's just be honest here. One of the most positive things that has come out of the internet in the last 10 years, and the way that gamers get involved with the inner workings of these game developers, publishers, corporations, is that we can hold them to account. What happened in regards to ZeniMax and Bethesda and sorry, what's the name of the other company?
Interplay.
Interplay, thank you. Yeah, in regards to what happened to them, it'd be a lot more difficult for something like that to happen without the appropriate backlash that the consumers would give in this day and age. And on top of that, in regards to Bethesda, at least, now that they have been bought out by Microsoft, there's a certain oversight, I think Saib would agree with this, that will sort of help prevent something like that from happening again. We obviously need to be vigilant in regards to this sort of thing happening with other companies, EA, anybody. But for now, I think things are looking a little bit brighter.
Yeah, Interplay made a lot of mistakes here too. I'll briefly talk about some of the mistakes that they made, because I talked with the leadership a number of times, and I was like, "Yeah, you have to go public with this stuff. You have to send out a clarion call. You need to take what you have from your game, and you have to put it up on because Kickstarter was really big back then. It was just like, it was starting up, and it was just really big. And I was like, you need to get people on your side. You need to get this out and have people and start to have people talk about this and react to this and get involved and get them off their couch and get them angry, and involve them in stuff." And the response was, we don't want to do that. We don't need to do that because we can do that on our own system. And so like one of the most idiotic decisions, it was truly idiotic, was that they didn't need Kickstarter to help fund anything, because Kickstarter took a portion of that money. They didn't want them to take a portion of that money, so they created their own Kickstarter on their own webpage that got absolutely no interaction with the community whatsoever. And this was the thing where I was like, why are you guys doing this? You need to open up. This was one of the companies that I first pitched, like, hey, you guys need to involve the community in getting audio work done for your game. Like, really, like, open up the amount of audio, the dialogue that you're able to record by getting just regular people to send you in lines and to send you in content and to create, to help you flesh out the world and to help create a whole bunch of like additional content. You need to be open to like mods and people like helping you to assist you with the creation of the game, because we were seeing this amazing modding community that was developing around Fallout 3, and back then I could tell that this was going to be a huge thing, and that they really needed to get their butts moving on this stuff. And the response came back from the higher ups that no, there was no way that they were going to incorporate regular people, because regular people can't make good content. And so that's where that mentality, I think, was the death knell of the company now, because instead of using a resource that was accessible and open to them in both, like, in the realm of like modders and creators, but also in the realm of like the sorry, my dog is snoring really loudly. I don't know if you can hear that.
Just a little bit.
But they that also fed back to them in the realm of like not just as smaller time creators, modders, and whatnot, but also from Kickstarter itself. It's like why should we let Kickstarter run this when we could run it on our own website and use our own website to do it? And then they went and they made a bunch of like really shallow promises and nobody wanted to back their progress at that point. And because they never got out in front of the story and helped control the content there was a lot of people that believed and still believe to this day that Interplay was the one who screwed up on their end of the bargain and that it was their fault that they lost the IP. And I remember very distinctly one person coming onto the forums and saying, I'm so glad you guys failed because screw you, Bethesda is the best game. Bethesda, and I've talked about this, I think I've mentioned this exact thing in the past when we were dealing with the whole 76 debacle. I remember one fellow coming on saying, I'm glad that you guys lost. I'm glad that you've lost control of the IP because Bethesda will make the greatest online Fallout game that will ever exist and will be one of the best online games ever created. Oh, how they probably ate those words, or they're a mindless fanboy, or they are a complete idiot who doesn't involve themselves in anything anymore.
Maybe they're that level. Maybe they're level 500 in Fallout 76 right now. I mean,
maybe they're like upper 900s or something like that. Maybe they think it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, or maybe they realize that, wow, I helped propagate like this huge problem that I then have to deal with and had to deal with for like well over a year. It's like, congratulations, your stupidity, arrogance, and foolishness is just legendarily bad. Like, wow, you're so bad. It's funny at this point. So that's kind of that's the scenario. And again, I want to reiterate that what we're seeing here going forward, I honestly believe, is we've seen them get bought out by Microsoft now, and now that the game is going to change. Now they don't need this stuff anymore, and hopefully we will be able to move past this stupid idea of them. I mean, these are the same people who sued for the word elder and scrolls. Like scrolls especially is like, yeah, we own that word. It's like, oh, you own a word that was literally the first word ever. Like, think about it this way. It was the first word ever written down. Hey, look, guys, you know how we talk to each other? Well, I decided to put some of the things that we're talking to each other, I've decided to call them words. Words? Yeah, words. And I've decided to put them down on this cow hide or goat hide. You see the symbol here? This is the symbol for a word. And it means words. This is where we're going to put our words. We're going to put the words down on this thing. Well, what's this thing called? I'm going to call it a scroll. Okay, cool. Wow, that's cool. It's better than writing it in the dirt every day. Yeah, let's do it. That was one of the first words. And Bethesda's like, again, ZeniMax litigation lawyer specialist was like, no, that's our word. We own that now. If you use it, we're going to sue your butt off. It's like,
so stupid.
The audacity.
Like when Immortals Phoenix Rising changed their name from Gods and Monsters because they didn't want, was it a legal thing between them and Monster Energy that they had to change their name? Like, come on, guys.
Something like that, yeah. I don't remember the exact details, but it was something stupid. And I remember another game. What was it? There was a little indie game. Spooky's House of Jump Scares or something. They changed it to Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion because of some naming conflict. Like, I don't know. These things get really silly sometimes.
Oh, one other thing that just came to mind. Speaking of Bethesda, Prey. There is a game being made by an indie developer. I can't remember what their name is, but they're essentially trying to as a spiritual successor to Shadow of the Colossus, one of the top 10 greatest games ever made, in my opinion. It's called Pray for the Gods. they had to change their name from PREY to PRAY because of a legal dispute with the guys over at Bethesda and the fact that they own the property Prey. It's pretty
Again,
stupid.
not Bethesda, ZeniMax with
Sorry.
the lawyer. And again, I know because it's been believed so hard that Bethesda was, Todd was himself behind all of this stuff. Todd doesn't believe in litigation in this way, and he was always upset when it was going on. But again, he's told by the company who employs him, who pays his checks, who lets him put food on the table, that if you dare cross us, we will ruin you.
Yeah.
And he's seen them ruin people before. So again, if you were in that scenario, you get two choices. You walk out. You probably get some flack. You probably get blackballed or blacklisted from everything. Every mistake will be blamed on you. You will have no hope of clearing your name, or you play the long game. And I would say now that he's working at the studio and he's got basically the right to do whatever he wants, and he's now the face of the company, actually now in combination with Microsoft directly, I would say he won that long game, and we are going to see the next Elder Scrolls and the next and Starfield. We're going to see these games come out in a far better way going forward. I don't think we're going to have another 76 on our hands. I really don't think so. Polly's 911 in the super chat. Thank you very much again. With Fallout 76 getting new DLC Steel Dawn, I wonder why Bethesda is still trying to keep 76 alive. Is it because they have obligations, or because they honestly want to fix 76? And also, why no love for the Enclave? Well, I think the Enclave thing is coming. Probably is. I mean, they want to keep this going. Obviously, I don't think that they want to abandon the project, because I think abandoning the project, there are a good amount of people who play the game and who really enjoy the game and who like the game. And the game is like, yes, release was horrendous, should never have been put out that way. I've railed on this number of times, but I've also said clearly, and I really hate it when people say, oh, you just love it. I'm like, no, I don't even have it installed anymore. I kept it installed on my system just until they did the quote unquote big fix. And I played the big fix where they added NPCs to the world, they added companions, they added a bunch of other stuff. They tried to fix most of the problems. Now, are there still problems? Yes, any online game is going to have huge problems. I mean, just watch some Rex Troy videos to see how a 15-year-old MMO game can be completely destroyed by not even like using things that are illegal, just by using entirely passive blasé systems within that game to completely wreck and destroy every kind of concept of the game. Rex Troy, one of his last videos before they did the whole big like update now to the Shadowlands patch. Rex Troy, he's a YouTuber, by the way, who makes content where he breaks games. He went into World of Warcraft, where your top level at that point was level 120, with a power scaling that was insane. So you could walk in and one-shot a boss from the last expansion. So that's how much the power scaling goes. So from expansion to expansion to expansion to expansion, guy had a level 21 mage, instantly killing level 120s in full top tier, top end of the line gear because of mechanics. Like, so that kind of thing. That thing happens all the time. 76 is no stranger to massive problems, and they're also no stranger to the common normal problems that happen in every online game that's ever been created ever. It's just they get a lot more flack for it because of the horrendous state that they shipped it in to begin with, and the horrendous state that it was in for nearly a year before it became a decent game. It's now a decent game. It's not a good game. It's not a great game. It's a decent game. And if you love Fallout a lot, it's actually worth it to play now because of the lore that they're injecting and because of the repairs to the lore that they're now doing in an attempt to make people happy. I don't think that they need to trash the game until they get a new online multiplayer Fallout experience.
And if there's still people playing it, if it's still profitable, obviously it's worthwhile for them to keep propping it up and keep creating content for it, even though,
And
like
I
you
mean,
said,
this
it's not fantastic, but it's
now,
playable
if
now.
if Microsoft can come in and assist them in helping them to expand the game in the same way that they expanded Sea of Thieves, I mean, Sea of Thieves is a great game now, and it didn't launch to the best, highest amount of praise that some people were really upset with the game. There were a lot of people who were really unhappy with the overall game when Sea of Thieves first launched, but I need to point it out now that Sea of Thieves is actually a pretty darn decent game right now, and if Microsoft can help Bethesda, and again, it's not actual Bethesda Maryland studio who made that game. It was they're one of the ones from, I believe it was Austin. That was the primary person, or was the primary team responsible for that. If they can fix that, then that's a good thing, and we should all be happy with that. If they can get that back up, and as long as the developers, as long as Microsoft never forget that lesson, then I think that's actually a good thing. I know a couple of guys who have monuments to their failures. So in their room or in their house, they have a. I remember one guy I went to. He had a picture with a check inside of it, and the check was posted on the thing, and it was for $1.02, $1.02 from a speaking gig that he did, and the guy who handed him the check said, "Poor speak, poor pay," and it was for $1, and it was, and he basically went, "Wow, I must have done absolutely terribly," and so he put the thing into a picture frame, and he put it up, and he looks at it every day because his primary goal is to always be a good speaker. And when I heard him speak, he was an absolutely, like, he was a very powerful speaker. So did that recognition of his failure have anything to do with assisting him to become better? I would sure hope so. And I think that I think it would be healthy if Microsoft and Bethesda remembered the mistake of 76, improved it as much as they could, and then when the next time that they approach making an online Fallout game, that they do so with the respect of wanting to have at no point have it be anything like that, and make sure that they do a good job of it. And I think that this is a standard. I mean, would you like to have all of your failures constantly loaded over you for the rest of your life, or would you like to be able to move on, especially once you can prove that you can move on and make something or do something better? So that's kind of the thing where, again, I'm not an apologist for them. I'm saying a lot of things that could get me in trouble with old Bethesda and certain people, and that risk is there. But I think by stating it the way that we have, I think it's clear that, like, look, we're not expecting Bethesda to do this again. I'm expecting Bethesda to grow, and if they want to say that cheating Interplay out of the Fallout IP was a good idea, then I'd say, well, 76 sure paid off for you, didn't it? I mean, think about it this way. They were going to sell this is what 76 was for, was to sell the studio, was to pitch it to somebody. And I suspect that they probably lost, I'd say 30-40% of what they were hoping to get because of that enormous debacle. So think about that. Somebody out there is grinding their teeth at night because they didn't make an extra, $2 billion dollars on top of that would have ended up in their pocket directly. That two, 3, maybe even $10 billion more didn't end up in their pocket because they messed up on the whole 76 project, and it dropped that asking price significantly because they showed up with a car to this car salesman and they're like, "Hey, buy this car," and then the engine literally dropped out of it in the middle of the transaction, and the guy's like, "Well, I'm only going to give you half of what you're asking for because I have to fix that massive problem that you just made." And I mean, I think that's poetic justice. Yeah, I think that's pretty poetic justice. So I mean, yeah.
All right. Well, we got to move on. I'm reading a lot of opinions on this in the live chat. If you guys want to carry on the continuation, like if you want to carry on the conversation, join our Discord server if you're not there already. Head to the gaming room, and you can talk about all of these things with the community. And Cyb and I and Moontag will probably chime in here and there.
I want to quickly respond to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, yes, it made money. It made a lot of money off of stupid people. Every stupid game makes a lot of, or not every stupid. A lot of stupid games make a lot of money off of a lot of stupid people. But when you're looking at it from like what they could have made, like you look at Fallout 4 and you look at Skyrim and you look at where they are in like the public mind's eye and the fact that most gaming households have 2.5 copies, paid copies of Skyrim. Think about that for a second. 2.5. They've bought the game on average at least twice, sometimes 3 times per gaming household.
Yeah.
That's insane when you think about it. That's insane when you think about it. Now imagine if they had that per gaming household for 76, because 76 was great, and 76 was now currently being played by, I don't know, let's say 200 million people on average a day. Imagine if that was their numbers. Imagine if they were dealing with numbers of like Genshin Impact. This game recouped $100 million in a week. Now there's some stupid people piling $5,000 into the game to get one character. They're insane, and that's crazy, by the way. Even if they do get to use that as a tax write-off, that's insane. Don't spend more than like $500 on this, please, for the love of God. And even that's ridiculous. Don't do that.
Even that sounds insane. $500
well, that
on it.
Content creator, whatever, right?
Well, okay, if it's
sure, I've spent money on the game, but I've spent money on the game because of, we're going to do content creation with it, not because it's the thing to do. It's like
yeah,
that's mentally like serious problems with that. So yeah, whatever you do, don't do that. But no, they lost money. Did they make money? Yes. But did they lose a lot of other potential money? They sure did, and it hurts. See, there's people in the world that they are so adamant and they are so money grubbing that even losing $5 on $1,000 transaction, they lose sleep over that. They grind their teeth at night because they didn't manage to pinch an extra like 2%. I've heard a guy freaking like lost his shit, drove his car into a wall because he lost 1% on a deal. He had a good deal. He made a good transaction, and he crashed his car, which was more than the 1% that he lost, because he was so angry that he didn't get that extra 1%. That's how some people think, and I can guarantee you that's how at least one person in this situation thinks, and they are that angry with themselves every morning. Every morning they wake up and they're angry with themselves. They're angry at the world because they didn't make that extra 1% that they were wanting and thinking that they could have made. So just remember, people, the person who tortures you the most and who can torture you the best is often yourself.
And that is not a fun way to live. It seems like maybe you need to value money a little bit less if you're hating yourself because you lost a few bucks. Anyway, let's move on and talk about Marvel's Avengers.
Here we go.
We won't. Okay, yeah, Max has a lot to say about it.
Max, go nuts. I'll be right back.
Max, go.
Oh, just go now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just go.
Okay. So in case you guys don't know, Avengers came out, less than a month ago? It was a game that, when I first heard about it, I thought, the possibilities here could be amazing. The idea of creating an ideal team of Avengers, going on missions, building up your characters, getting loot, and all that good stuff. And sorry if you hear a bit of noise in the background. It's the garage below me. It'll go away in 2 seconds. The idea, the possibilities of a great Avengers game following along the lines of the greatness of Spider-Man, which came out in 2018, was really, really enticing. I could not wait. And then naturally, what happens with all these types of games, they try to do it like Destiny did it back in the day, where they take out all the cool stuff that was going to be in it and just basically fill it with microtransactions. Except in this case, they managed to do it worse, and they didn't keep the core player base that Destiny still has today. GG to Marvel's Avengers, GG to Crystal Dynamics. Right now, their player counts are absolutely abysmal. And they're like, oh, no, they'll come back once we have Kate Bishop and Spider-Man coming out. Are you sure? Are you sure? Well, maybe if you actually had enough core good mechanics there in the first place and good loot, which you don't have, maybe that would have been possible. But right now, it's looking like you're going to go the way of Anthem. Thank you so much, Crystal Dynamics. Thank you so much for doing this to this wonderful, wonderful franchise. I'm done.
Okay. No strong opinions there.
So, I mean, well, can you go into a little bit more of like the areas that they failed on, multiplayer, single player, like story, like what exactly did they fail on so hard?
Oh, you're asking me? Well, it's apparently I have only been hearing from people that have actually played the game and the little bit of footage that I've seen, but it seems like the core gameplay, it's just like button mashing and just repetitive mission design in order to get basically non-existent loot. That's what I've heard. And unfortunately, compared to a game like the aforementioned Destiny, at least that game had really, really excellent gunplay and some decent loot. But what we're seeing here is more akin to like that of Anthem, where the loot system and the post game content isn't that good. Now, granted, the campaign for Marvel's Avengers is actually pretty decent. The story is apparently pretty good, but that's good for like a single player game. It's not something that you can really depend on for a live service game where you're needing to feed content to people to make sure they keep coming back. You know what I mean?
All right. Any other thoughts?
Well, Cybe, are you going to rant on it?
Did we lose Cyber? I don't know. Anyway, he might be dealing with noisy puppies or something. Puppy
He's
updates.
going Hulk on his dogs.
Yeah, you can check out, for those of you interested in puppy updates, you can check out our Twitter account. There's pictures there. Also the Discord server, of course.
They're so precious. Like, one of them, we named her Paimon after the Genshin character. And the other one is Saber. She's a wee one. And like, oh, she's so cute. They're both so adorable. Their eyes just started opening. And they're just so precious.
I wish I had pictures to put up right now, but unfortunately, don't have any handy. But yeah, definitely.
Check the voice chat paste bin. There's some there that I just posted. You can pull those up and put them up.
All right. Well, I'll see if I can do that before we get to the end of the show here. But anyway, so I know we have Polly's in the chat who he is not shy of his hatred for Marvel's Avengers. He's written about it a lot on Discord and elsewhere. Katriox actually thinks the game was fun, and but refunded it because of technical issues.
Yeah, from what I heard, like I said, there are moments of fun, and the campaign and the story are good. But because it is primarily a live service game, the content unfortunately isn't there, and the core gameplay isn't sophisticated enough to have you keep coming back. That is, from what I understand, the core problem. Am I missing anything there, Saib? I know you had some stuff you wanted to say on it.
I think
the
we might have lost Saib again. Okay, Moon, why don't you read that new super chat we just got?
Sure. Thanks again, Polly's, for the super chat. Avengers had somewhat okay story, and that was a bait for people like me. I only realized how bad the game was after being done with SP. I was tricked.
I want a good Iron Man game so bad. Who doesn't want to play as Iron Man, being able to fly around and blow stuff up? I mean, come on. And being able to do that alongside all the other Avengers, there's a really good game there. It's just, unfortunately, the business side of this sort of seemed to get in the way of the development. That's what it seems to be. I could be wrong about that, and I'd be happy to be corrected about it.
Well, it certainly seems kind of like that case. Like, people see like such a popular franchise like that, and they're like, "Ooh, let's hop on that bandwagon and have our take on it." But just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's necessarily a good one.
Yeah, and when I heard about this game, I was so excited at the prospect of there being like a shared game universe to mirror that of the movie universe, where we could have the Spider-Man that Insomniac created sort of team up with Avengers, with being made by one franchise, and I don't know, maybe like another game developer could do a Hulk game, and another one could do an Iron Man game, and they all team up. I know it's a pipe dream; it would never happen, but just the concept of that happening seems so exciting, and to see it turn into what it is now is so disappointing.
All right.
But at least we got Cyberpunk, as Blissful Soul says. We have that.
At least we have that coming in. Yes, bright things on the horizon for that. Less than a month away from the release of Cyberpunk 2077. Should be, exciting times ahead. So I think we'll wrap up the show. I don't know what happened to Cyb there, but I think we'll wrap up the show there as we're pushing in the second half of the second hour. But it's been a great discussion today. Thank you so much for joining us, Max.
Thank you for having me.
Always appreciate having you here. Thank you, everybody who's in the live chat for the great conversation. And the conversation does not have to be over, as I will once again plug the Discord server. Join us there for some great talk, some great conversation. There's great people there. And we work very hard to keep it a very positive and uplifting and, just a generally positive place, which doesn't mean there isn't debate. You can debate stuff, for sure, but we just expect it to be done respectfully without name-calling and toxic stuff like that. So, join us there. All right, and, of course, if you haven't already, please do slam that like button. We really appreciate that. It tells YouTube that you appreciate this content. It tells us that you appreciate this content. It tells us when we're doing well. It helps us to continue to improve, so really appreciate that. Thank you for joining us today. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters and our channel members who helped to make this content possible. Robin, Shua82, Time Bean, Schoolaman, Lady Reaver, Dreco Den, Niv, Jer Schultz, Game Notes, Night City Punk, Terror K, and Somnolence. Lots of great folks there. We really appreciate that very much. And what else can I say? The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, tons more quality gaming content. By the way, if you were waiting for part 2 of our Cyberpunk 2077 romance tier list, that came out a couple of days ago, and we hope you enjoy that.
You have to watch it. Yeah. It's so good. I was dying of laughter. Oh my god.
So we had a lot of fun putting that together, so definitely check that one out, and check out part 1 if you haven't seen that either. All right, on behalf of Subsidian and Moontag and our special guest, Max Derrat, by the way, check out his channel. You can click on his name in the chat if you're in the live chat right now, or I'll add the link in the description below for the VOD version. Thank you for joining us again, and thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.